Late. It's not our fault. It's silly restream. I can't blame my Wi-Fi for once. My Wi-Fi speed test is going very well. Anyway, blah blah blah. Complain. If you saw me last week, you know that I give good tantrum, but I'm gonna try and not do that today. Try to put on my best behavior for the Libra in the room. How are you, Patrick?
I'm okay. I've just been I wasn't with you last week. I was getting over a nasty cold. It wasn't COVID. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but thankfully I'm kind of finally out of the woods and getting back to normal. And yeah, I mean,
It's the season.
that's pretty much what I've been doing. But I've also just been tying up the final loose ends with my website. I thought I was going to be able to release it before Mercury entered Libra, but it looks like it's going to be a Mercury and Libra thing. So that's almost here.
Great.
So I'll let you know when that's happening. Other things that are happening that are coming up next Thursday. I'm going to be joining a bunch of other astrologers and with Catherine Urban at catherineurban.com. Basically, it's going to be a panel on essential dignity. So all of the different astrologers have a placement in their chart that where a planet is in its own sign or in its exaltation or in its sign of its fall or debility. And we're going to be answering questions about those placements. And so that's got a bunch of other really cool astrologers. And actually, my wife, Beth, is going to be joining us for that. That's like her first sort of like event as an astrologer. So that should be really fun. And if you want to see that, you have to sign up at catherineurban.com.
All right.
And
that's on Thursday.
Kind of what's happening. Yes, October 12th.
October 12th
is this Thursday. Yeah.
yes, it is this Thursday. Okay, what time?
It is.
I know. I ask all the tough questions.
It's at 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern time, okay. But I'm sure that it will be available later or afterwards.
Sure.
So that's a little plug.
All right.
For that.
Good.
That's kind of something coming up.
I'm going to tune in for that. Well, fantastic.
How are you? How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Like you, I think it's just the season. There's a bug going around. I've taken 2 COVID tests in the past month, both of which were negative, but I was sort of prompted to at least take a test and see how serious things were. But it's Canada. You're used to it. In October, everyone gets a flu or a bug or a cold, and I can't remember a winter where I never got one living here. So wow. It's just like it just happens. It's like sunburns in summer. It's hard to escape them. Anyway, I'm glad to know you're better. We missed you last week, although as it happened, yet again, I had another sort of Wi-Fi nightmare on Sunday. So the stream would have been a headache anyway. The Wi-Fi is great now. I got an extender. I did, I've done everything I can to make it strong. And then Restream decided, Nick, you don't need to be on time for today's stream. There's no reason for you to put up a front of competence and professionalism when, hey, it's Sunday and we feel like doing what we want and we don't want to give you service. And there we are. Aside from that, I've been I've been working all week on a series of videos about the Venus synodic cycle and the Mars synodic cycle in the life of Muhammad Ali. But the thing is, it's so extensive that I thought I was going to release it like on Monday, but I keep thinking like, oh no, I got to add this thing. Oh no,
you go overboard.
Overboard. No, I know. No. And I'm trying to make these concise little things, but it really is.
Yeah, I know. I'm like Nick, you're like the ultimate long form astrologer, and you trying to do TikTok is like trying to cram
the Lincoln one. The Lincoln one really worked. The Lincoln one really worked. I felt.
Oh
Like
no,
in
I'm
terms
not
of, yeah.
saying you. I'm not saying you can't do it well. Everyone should definitely follow Nick on TikTok.
But yeah,
I'm
but it
just
is a
saying, the very prospect is is interesting to think. Like the ultimate long form astrologer and probably the shortest form content,
right. No, sure.
platform.
I do want to do these longer form essays as well, but I mean, Lincoln was this great Lincoln and Mary Todd Lincoln, Abraham and Mary Todd Lincoln, made this great sort of simple example that I could present. I didn't
Mhm.
choose them for
Yeah,
any other reason, like oh, this is a great way to get the whole idea across in a couple of minutes. Um, Ali is sort of more intricate because everything in his life is Venus and Mars. Like you can, the level of detail that you can use those two cycles to sort of explain the course of his life. It's really, yeah, I kind of, I didn't bite off more than I can chew, but it just in order to present it properly,
right.
I just kept thinking like, no, I can't leave this thing out. No, I can't leave that thing out. And so it's going to be, rather than just like, I was going to do one or two, first it was going to be one short video, then it was going to be two short videos, but I was going to try to tape them all at the same time. And now I'm realizing, no, tape one per day. So I was out this morning trying to record one. And I got some good rehearsal in, but I didn't sort of get the take I wanted. So I'm going to
Gotcha.
go out and work on that some more. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that done because I do want to, Sun, Mars, and Scorpio is coming up next month, and I have a lot of really good Mars material. So that's the nice thing about Ali is that he's both. So I'm gonna, like, the first part of the Ali video will kind of be like the Lincoln thing, where I just go through things like, marriages and other sort of personal landmarks in the person's life using the Venus synodic cycle. But then I extend it to Mars and show how Mars has this connection to his parents and to his fight career. And
Wow.
yeah, so it's good.
Speaking of Mars,
Yes. Yes.
that seems to be really big in the news right now.
Gee, you think? Why? What's going on? Seems pretty quiet out there.
No, I mean it's
No,
really
I
it's very
no.
horrible.
Yeah.
Obviously what's happening in Israel is really
Yeah.
real bad, and I know that the politics of that can be really controversial and really messy, but I think anyone can agree that regardless of how you feel, whichever side you're sort of for, like, no one really wants to see this kind of
No,
violence being perpetrated. These are um you know these are bad things which are happening, so can certainly sympathize or empathize with
oh God, yeah.
the human aspect of it.
Yeah, I'm seeing stuff on my Twitter feed yesterday that was pretty upsetting. Um,
So
I've gotten news on Twitter, the Ukraine war. You see these sort of like combat this combat footage that's out there. And so that's already been kind of like, wow, this is a new era now. Like it was one thing I remember in 1991 when the first Gulf War happened and we were sort of watching it on CNN, and that seemed so revolutionary to sort of watch a war in real time, as opposed to like in the Vietnam War when people would see it, on the 6 o'clock news 1 hour a day. But this is just so immediate. And this is that sort of that phenomenon of watching things happen in real time, watching terrible things happen in real time, watching people, die or who are about to be killed or what have you. That kind of that instant footage on Twitter. God, I mean, it really, there's no way it can't sort of get you,
sure.
yeah. So yeah, I
um
mean, obviously, long story short, I mean, you're right. This is a very controversial subject. No doubt that this is going to change the course of a lot of things. It's funny. I've been telling people, over the last few years that the 21st century is really only going to start in 2025, when all those other, when Pluto finally goes into Aquarius fully, when Uranus goes into Gemini, when Neptune goes into Aries. Sort of putting it that way. I mean, really, I guess the 21st century started either September 11th, 2001, or maybe January 1st, 2001. But
Right.
in not the say, like with the 20th century, people like to say like there was the long 19th century that went from 1789 to 1914.
Hmm.
And that the 20th century really began, after the First World War or with the First World War. So, there's two different ways of looking at eras. You can either go, by the centuries, or you can look at these really sort of defining, uh, um, shift poles that are global and all encompassing. Anyway, to long story short, I saw one headline today that the 21st century began today, with these attacks in Israel. So I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to slice it, I suppose. But
Right.
yeah, there's no
So
matter what you think, we're going in.
yeah, I guess the thing that's sort of surprising to me about these developments, these recent developments, is that some of these things didn't happen sooner. The reason I say that is because, um, I mean, I'm definitely not the first person to have noticed this, but we know that the state of Israel was created through the UN. This is like the start of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that happened in 1947, and of course that was in the time frame of Saturn Pluto conjunction, and we know that
Mhm,
Saturn is about barriers or borders or boundaries, and being sort
mhm,
of infected by Pluto kind of makes them really toxic, or stratifying, or producing or coinciding with sort of intractable conflicts and bridges that can't be passed over and that sort of thing. um and so when you get to like the next Saturn Pluto square in 1953, that's around the time of the massacre of Operation Shoshana.
mhm.
um you get to the opposition between Saturn and Pluto in 1966, and you get the hostilities that lead ultimately to the Six-Day War.
In
um
'67, right? Yeah.
yeah, and then 1973, that's
Mhm.
the Yom Kippur War, that's the Saturn Pluto square. And then
And
you get to
and
this.
and in fact, yesterday's attack was deliberately
Yeah,
timed for the 50th anniversary of the Yom
right.
Kippur War. Yeah,
That's true, yeah. And then we get the Saturn Pluto conjunction in the early 80s, and this is the time of the Lebanon War,
yeah.
which is really important to remember that uh, it was during the war, is during the Lebanon War that Osama bin Laden first got the idea to attack the United States with, by attacking towers. He said he saw these towers fall during the war of Lebanon that uh, made him realize that was the way he wanted to attack. And of course, that attack took place at the next Saturn Pluto opposition. Um, and the main reason that was seemingly given by Osama bin Laden and his organization was that it was, this is sort of retribution against the United States for its support of Israel. And so that's why, I mean, unless it's something major I'm forgetting, I would have thought that the Saturn Pluto conjunction at the beginning of 2020 would have featured some
Right.
other
No.
sort of development in the story of the Israel Palestine conflict. And of course, I'm sure there's like other there's other cycles I'm sure in play here. There have been other outbreaks of violence before
Right.
like this, but um I
Well, we did have COVID in 2020 with Saturn Pluto, and that did introduce some really curious elements, in the Middle East. Of course,
yeah,
Israel was on the vanguard of vaccine development, as I recall,
sure.
and production, and there was this weird situation where there was all this conflict with Palestinians, but still having to inoculate them,
Right,
and that sort of weird kind of like they're at war and they're hostile to each other, but that whole other sort of side thing had to
right. One of the interesting things about that cycle is because of the way the Saturn Pluto cycle connected to the this other cycle of like terrorism. Um obviously like the 9/11 attacks, and then later in 2010 the Saturn Pluto square and the sort of other terrorist incidents that happened in that year in the United States. Um, what I thought was kind of interesting about that is, to me, I thought that was why I kind of made a prediction back in 2017 that the one of the effects of the Saturn Pluto conjunction would be the end of the war in Afghanistan in 2020. So what's interesting is that while the official withdrawal of the U.S. From Afghanistan happened later, the actual treaty that was drawn up between the Taliban and the U.S. was signed in January 2020. Which was exactly in the month, practically of the Saturn Pluto conjunction. So I always thought that was a really, I mean, there were probably other ways that could have been approached, but that was kind of one of my thoughts, is that, if the war was sort of established by a Saturn Pluto opposition, that maybe it would come to an end at the conjunction. So that's kind of why I say I'm almost a little surprised that there wasn't something more obvious, I guess,
Sure.
in
Yeah.
line
No,
with
I hear
those
you.
other
Yeah.
instances. I mean, maybe there was, and I don't know. I admit, like, I'm not an expert on Israel-Palestinian affairs, and
This
I'm not
the reason I haven't
necessarily the most
studied
informed person to speak about this.
the reason I haven't studied the Middle East more than I have astrologically is that, okay, what happened yesterday is obviously exceptional, but generally speaking, it just always seems to be like cranked up to 11, just, insanity all the time, violence all the time. So it's like, I can never get my head around it astrologically, when things just seem to be like sort of like when the volume is always cranked up that high, when there's no sort of peaks and valleys, or very few peaks and valleys. You can talk about the Camp David Accords, I suppose, in 1978, but those are over 40 years ago.
Yeah, I mean,
But
unfortunately, I mean, our perspectives
generally,
are going to be somewhat more U.S. or Canada centric, maybe.
yeah,
As much,
well, but
we're going to
yeah,
resist that, but
but I mean, my point being that it always seems to be, excuse my French, a shit show. It just
right. I
always
mean,
seems to be
and we're
chaos. It
also
always
getting
seems
the,
to be oppressive. There's
well,
always bombs going off. There's always, so it's like, how do you do
sure,
the astrology of that?
right.
So yeah, that's been the thing that's hardest for me. Obviously, what happened yesterday is with few exceptions, like a real sort of landmark, and a rather ugly one, but it is out of the ordinary. It isn't just sort of cranked up to 11, it's cranked up to 22. you know
So, question: just a few minutes ago, or not even a couple minutes ago, I saw like a ghostly like thumbs
Thumbs
up
up,
here
yeah, I
for
saw that. Where was I
what
saw
was
that?
that?
Well, it wasn't me, it had nothing to do with me.
Oh yeah,
Someone,
also a non sequitur. Someone has spotted my
yeah, I
cat.
see your kitty there. I see
Yeah,
your kitty
this
there.
Daisy
Nice way to
again.
try to get us to stop talking about the Middle East, is to talk about the cute little kitty.
I can't
Nope.
navigate my camera that way.
No.
Oh well, yeah, you'll have to just enjoy where she is.
There you are.
It was
She's
really funny. We got that cat and another cat like in February 2020, right before the pandemic really hit, right before the lockdowns happened, and we asked the kids, what do you want to name the cat, and like
Uh-oh,
they
that's asking
decided
for trouble.
they
That's a
decided they decided within like 3 seconds that she was going to be called Daisy. I'm like, okay, how did that happen? Anyway,
like
um,
they had a meeting beforehand.
yeah, I don't know.
They
They just
they
like, yeah, that was probably the quickest decision I've ever seen them make.
sure.
But anyway,
It's
total.
it's my belief you always let the kids name the animals.
I
That's
guess
my
this is
that's my
the slight mental break from the horrors that are happening. But someone does have an interesting question here. Vinny P75 says, does the Mars square Pluto with the South node preceding the eclipse have something to do with this? I would think that we probably. I think it's tempting for us to maybe just look at the transits and see what's happening and try to make that sort of the exhaustive explanation. But I think taking note of the transits should probably be done more comprehensively, and this is part of a narrative. This is part of a
Yeah,
whole
this is part of a big story.
history, and so
Yeah.
there may be other things that like aren't apparent to us right now. So, for example, I think the fact that we're coming up to a solar eclipse may be, relevant, because this may fit into some other sort of past pattern of eclipses. But I probably have to know a lot more about the history. Like, the only thing that I've sort of been able to put together is this very basic idea of the Saturn Pluto cycle and the Israeli-Palestine conflict. When it comes to Mars, we would think that maybe Mars would be doing something sort of notable, at the time of
Yeah,
increased
I mean,
hostilities. And
this is where I mean the 2 cents that I have to contribute, insofar that I have studied the Middle East astrologically. Um, the 6 Day War in 1967 started not long after the Mars retrograde that went from Scorpio to Libra. Like, Mars stationed direct in Libra, and then the 6 Day War happened. In 1973, you had the Yom Kippur War, which was Mars retrograde in Taurus. And that's a whole thread in itself, because whenever Mars is retrograde in Taurus, you get all the landmarks pertaining, well, not all of them, but a lot of the really important dates in transportation, like not just oil, but highways. Like Route 66 opened during the Mars retrograde in Taurus of 1926, that kind of thing. But the Yom Kippur War, which introduced the oil embargo and OPEC and all that, sort of the new age in the age we still live in, with the global oil. That all came up. So my point being, like, the two sort of flashpoint conflicts before, Mars was always in a conspicuous place, and maybe we're in a Mars return to the 6 Day War. I can open up my chart file and have a look. But
you said it was a Mars retrograde going from Scorpio to Libra.
That's right. And now we have
then we're coming up to a Sun Mars conjunction in Scorpio.
Yeah. Which is like the flip side. Yeah.
This is the flip side, the reverse of the retrograde. So I would think that
but the thing is, in 1967, sorry to interrupt, the Mars retrograde, the Mars retrograde in 1967 actually started in very early Scorpio. I think the retrograde was even at like 1 or 2 degrees of Scorpio, and then wandered into Libra. Like, if you've seen the chart of Kurt Cobain, and he had a Pisces Sun trine Mars in Scorpio, his progressed Mars would go retrograde pretty soon after he was born, or
so
anyone
that's where
born
Mars
in
is right now.
Well, yeah. So there is that. That's the one thing that occurs to me. But what is interesting is it's not Mars retrograde. We're nowhere near a Mars retrograde, but it is Mars with the South Node, which is interesting to say the least. Here, let me pull some charts up, and then we can look here.
I mean, the fact that it's on the South Node is sort of interesting conceptually, because I think we have this idea typically that when a planet is conjunct the South Node, that it somehow minimizes the impact of that planet. You get these like medieval authors talking about the South Node reduces the bad of malefics and reduces the good of benefics.
Yeah.
But in this case, we have to say this is like more of an intensification of anything. Although it should be noted that it is Mars square Pluto, and Pluto is about to station, so it may be that level of that's a bit more that's a little more on the money, but that's still kind of an annual event. And Mars is invisible right now as well in Tel Aviv. Mars set back in back on September 8th.
Okay.
Is when the heliacal setting actually occurred, and we're still about a month away from almost 2 months away from
the conjunction. About a month and a half. I think it's mid-November. Yeah, maybe 5 weeks really.
Yeah, it's like November
5 weeks away.
13th, 14th. Yeah. So we're kind of in between its disappearance and its renewal with the sun.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have stood out to me immediately as like being like a crucial moment, except for the fact that it's square stationing Pluto, apparently in the part of the zodiac where Mars has sort of been doing things before. So maybe that's enough of a kind of an echo of these past events.
Yeah, you can
And
see, you can see here. This is the. It's not a time chart, but it's the day that the 6 Day War began. You know that there was an invasion from Egypt, and Israel fought it back. And you can see Mars was in Libra just 10 days after its direct station. So as you know, like you know, I've talked about this a lot with U.S. history. This is a volatile time for Mars. I know that this isn't the case we're talking about in this instance, but you know, after a Mars direct station, that seems to be when you know, the planet really is.
the arrow is flying.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see it's opposite Saturn there too. So this really was, you know, quite a contentious Mars direct station. Funny that, you know, the Beatles were releasing Sergeant Pepper just a couple of days earlier, like just this previous weekend. Like it's the flip side of all that. And within a month or so, they'd be
Although
doing All You Need Is Love.
I guess the eclipses though would also be roughly in the same axis.
You can see, yeah. I mean that's caught my eye too as I'm looking here. Is that this Mars is approaching a south node? Like within a month or so, there would be a Mars south node.
This was about a month after a solar eclipse in Taurus or lunar eclipse in Scorpio, or depending on the exact alignment, might have even been a lunar eclipse in Aries that previous spring. But
Yeah,
you know, maybe that.
let's go look at these. So you can see here.
So solar eclipse in mid Taurus.
Whoops.
Put them pretty wide, but
yeah, wide.
Wide, but what happened?
Yeah, but it happened. I think that the thing to me though, look, that this Mars retrograde would have been closer to the south node, like a little earlier, right? How close were they? I guess okay, they came within like 6 degrees of each other. See, this is the retrograde station in 1967. Like I said, you know, very early, 3 degrees, and it's pretty close to the south node when it goes retrograde. 6 degrees. So that's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's something.
Yeah.
Another thing that kind of strikes me about it being in Libra is the fact that isn't Benjamin Netanyahu a sun in Libra?
Jeez.
Let's. I think he's a sun in Libra. See, it's funny because yeah,
it's October 21st, 1949.
So that means the Mars. In fact, wasn't. Wait a sec. Okay,
Mars is in Leo.
21st. No, October 21st, 1949. That's his birth date. He was born on the day of a solar eclipse in Libra.
Yeah, he was.
Okay.
And the nodes were that south node was at 50. Yeah. No,
okay, all right.
Should I put up the
show? Yeah,
here?
no, please. Yeah, go ahead, show.
Okay, now I just put up the chart that I have in my database, and this does say it's a DD, but that's just for the time. So what I'm just gonna do is, like, we don't know that that's his time. I'm just gonna make it a solar chart and not how I should have it entered in the first place. So this is what we know. It's just it's a noon chart. We don't really know what time he was born. If he was born at 9:30 a.m. like that DD rated chart, then the moon would just be a little bit earlier. But yeah, this is his day, and he was born the day of you're absolutely right, of a south node solar eclipse in Libra.
So we are just days from another solar eclipse in Libra. So is this like part of the? Yeah, he has the nodes in Aries just like they are now. So there's a possibility that this is actually on the same. Would this be on the same Saros? Let's see.
Not necessarily, because the Saros the Saros doesn't hold to zodiacal degrees. You know what I mean? Like
it might not be the same. Yeah, that's true.
And the minute that's a big trap that you have to learn early is if you start trying to memorize Saros cycles by eclipses happening in the same part.
You have to like subtract or add 10 degrees. Yeah. Off totally.
Yeah. You're better off, like, unless you have the Saros cycles memorized.
I don't have the Saros cycles memorized.
Yeah, neither do I.
However, you can use Metonic cycles a little more reliably.
Okay, yeah,
But
sure.
they're
Yeah.
going to be
Yes, yeah,
different
yeah.
Saros. So every 19 years, you get a
Yes.
similar solar eclipse
Yes,
zodiacally.
that is reliable. That is reliable. And you go to 38 after 19 and what have you.
Yeah.
And there's and then you go to 56, which I was talking about earlier with the simultaneous synodic return with Venus. So yeah, no, you can look at eclipses that way. I'm just saying if you're trying to memorize a Saros number, then by zodiacal degrees, then you're on a fool's errand.
So Pluto is squaring his sun, and Mars is squaring his sun. Mars is conjunct his sun then
Yeah,
right now as well.
it's
Okay.
all pretty. Yeah, when you look at his chart, it does make a lot of sense. I mean, we don't know. This is an untimed chart, but just you see some bodies in the quote unquote
Right.
right places, if you will.
Now, what about the Hamas leader? I think that's Hania.
Yeah. The
I don't
thing
know if that's how
is
you
that
pronounce it.
Muslim birthdays can be tricky because sometimes they adopt assumed birthdays and you don't get the actual reported birthday.
Oh,
It
well,
can be.
let's
I mean,
see.
it depends, but it can be very
Okay,
difficult.
so Ismail Hania was born, according to this, January 29th, 1962.
Okay. Oh, so he's one of those. He's one of those mega Aquarius stelliums.
Yeah,
He's
he's
got.
gonna have
He's
an
got.
Aquarius
He's going to have
stellium.
Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn in Aquarius.
Um, so, okay. Do you want to put that data in, or shall I?
What's the date again?
It was January 29th, 1962.
Okay. How do you spell his name?
Ismail, Ismail,
Okay.
and then his last name is Hania,
Mm-hmm.
Haniyeh.
Okay. Where was he born?
He was born. You may not have trouble finding this on Solify, but it
Let's see.
says Al Shati Refugee Camp, Gaza Strip.
Okay.
Al Shati is also known as Beach Camp. You might just want to put like.
Yeah, I'm just going to put Jerusalem for now. I mean, we're not doing a time chart, just to get
sure.
to get the time zone right.
Yeah, just to see it.
Yeah, sure enough. Just a moment, folks. I'll share this with you. And here we go. Yeah, so there you are. Like I was saying. Okay, so Mars is actually in Capricorn.
Wait a sec.
Oh my God.
Put those together. Wait.
Put him
a sec.
Him and the transits together, or him and Netanyahu together?
Tri-wheel. I want to see Ismail. I want to see Benjamin, and I want to see the current transits. So we have a Mars-Pluto square where Mars is conjoining Benjamin Netanyahu's sun, and where Pluto is conjunct Ismail Hania's Mars.
That was now 7th. Do you know what time the attack started yesterday?
No.
Okay,
I saw a bunch of people.
I'll just keep the.
Yeah, but this is this is going to be a really impressive tri-wheel here. Yeah, check that out. So, yeah, Mars conjunct Benjamin Netanyahu's sun, and Pluto conjunct Ismail's
Hania's Mars. Yeah, and their Marses are square, and
Wait a second.
Their Marses are square.
Ismail Hania would have been born within like a
close
just over a day of a
yeah.
lunar eclipse.
Yeah. The eclipses were happening at this time too. Yeah.
So we have I mean, this is so it's so common. You often do see people who end up being in these sort of positions of leadership of like countries and stuff being born sort of close to eclipses or with sort of eclipsey activity. And wow, okay, so
this is the same reason that when I'm trying to look at stocks with astrology, you try to find the CEO's birthday. Which can be hard because a lot of them don't give it up, and sometimes you have to go to drastic measures, but that's for another conversation.
Right, right.
Yeah, no, this is quite academic, wouldn't you say? Like,
Yeah, this is kind of a straightforward,
yeah,
like malefic pilot. Now, again, though, I would again, this sort of makes me even more puzzled about 2020, because we know that the Saturn Pluto pilot would have happened, would have
on
activated that same.
Hania's Mars. We should look
Yeah,
at.
and
I mean, the
so
thing is, like, like I said, I find the Middle East very hard to study because it always seems to be in turmoil, and so it's hard for me to detect
so
the peaks and valleys, and therefore harder to sort of get any sense of what's going on
okay, let's
astrologically.
see what actually happened in 2020. So, January 15th, 2020, Israel carried out several airstrikes on Gaza, including Jabalia, in response to 4 rockets fired from the enclave.
Yeah, well,
January, I
so
mean,
okay, like it's not, see, but again,
uh,
that's just like
uh, I
when that
mean,
happens, you're like,
yeah,
oh yeah, I guess that's a week in the history of
but
humanity.
every single month has
Hmm.
like multiple events
That was the
in
that was the
2020.
yeah, that was the joke because they were doing that, but at the same time they had to vaccinate everyone. So it was like they were
Wow,
bombing
yeah,
Gaza, but also vaccinating them. Which is, I mean, when I
wow.
say joke, obviously this is
Right,
very,
yeah, I know
yeah,
what you
not
mean. Yeah,
like,
we're talking gallows humor,
like,
not
yeah, yeah, gallows humor, strange, funny, not like knee slapping funny.
yeah.
But yeah, that's that really was. So yeah, so you see what I'm talking about? Like there were attacks we were dealing with COVID, so it was like, oh, really? Israel's bombing Gaza, like, it must be at one of the 7 days of the week. And again, I don't mean to sound glib or heartless. It's just like
Right,
when you receive this news, I know it's terrible. Every single instance, that means, someone's going through sheer hell, because of it. But
right.
I'm just saying, in the news cycle, it just seems to be like, so ordinary, so unremarkable.
Wow. I mean, it's what's kind of interesting about this too is, I mean, unless you like knew about those natal charts ahead of time and you notice that particular Mars Pluto square lining with their charts, you might not necessarily have been able to call this, but you might have been able to say more generally, like, solar eclipse is happening in Libra, therefore, like leaders who have the sun in Libra, might sort of come up in the news.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
then Netanyahu would have, I mean, that it, like when I try to go through my sort of mental Rolodex of like Libra sun leaders. In fact, another person I'm kind of expecting to become of greater importance during this eclipse is Kamala Harris,
Okay,
because
yeah.
she was born at a full moon in Aries,
Mhm.
with the nodes rising and setting on the
Right.
horizon at the time she was born. And she wasn't born like at an eclipse, but like, born in an exact lunar phase with the
Sure.
nodes straddling the horizon. Like I would consider that to, be enough of a kind of, um, that arrangement certainly evokes the idea that like the sun and the moon and their interactions are going to be important. And certainly when there are solar and lunar events occurring in, in Libra and Aries this month and in next fall and next spring. Um, Now we could say, well, this is just because she's going up for being reelected as the VP, or up for facing the general election.
Yeah, it's
But
probably
I wonder,
a bit more specific than that.
but I wonder if it'll be a little more specific than that, because if we look at the fact that the solar eclipse is happening in Biden's uh 11th house,
Yeah.
um, I mean, it's difficult to say exactly what house uh the vice president would occupy in a president's chart, but I think 11th could make sense because they're
Yeah.
an ally, and they're supposed to be kind of
Yeah, I
able
mean,
to.
I was thinking 11th house being more like America's allies, like, Israel.
Yeah, sure,
You
yeah.
know, uh, y you
Right,
know, uh, um,
that's
or
true.
God forbid, Canada. I'll go hide under my bed. Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess that remains to be seen. I've been thinking for a while that, Biden just seems really, really shaky. Of course,
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken about this at length before
Yeah, we
in
did.
a previous live stream as well.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, but I wonder in what way, or how exactly this could come about. Should we look at Kamala Harris's chart to
Yeah,
see
well,
if we
yeah,
can make some more sense of these eclipses?
we can have a look. See, this is another reason why we need to get our AI program on, and it can just monitor the news, and it can tell us, oh, ahead of time. It'll know,
Yeah,
oh, these
no,
two
I
birthdays,
always,
these two
yeah,
birthdays are getting these transits, and we better brace ourselves, or what have you.
right. Yeah, because I only think of these things, when as they're coming up. I'm not
Yeah,
always
sure.
thinking ahead or looking at, unless I happen to be studying a particular chart and I go, oh dang,
Yeah,
they're due for some events.
indeed. All right, I'm about to put her chart up.
Chelsea Collins said her ZR is interesting too. I think you said, Patrick. Yeah, I gotta say, props to Lisa Scheim, who basically totally nailed the fact that Kamala Harris would become of greater importance, because when we got a hold of Kamala Harris's birth time, it was Lisa Scheim who first sort of publicized her observation that Kamala Harris was coming to Zodiac releasing peak periods, when releasing from a lot of spirit, and that peak period started basically right after she was elected vice president. That continued for about 12 years.
Right.
So let's take a look at Kamala Harris's chart.
Here she is.
See what's
Here she
going
is.
on.
So yeah, Sun at 27 Libra. She just had Mars retrograde on her ascendant last year. You don't hear that much about her.
Right. Well, it's let's see. So
Oh, and her progressed Uranus is going to station retrograde by secondary progression next year when she turns 60. And of course, she turns 60 just before the election. Uranus
right now she's
retrograde. Right now, her progressed Pluto is stationing retrograde.
So right now she's age 58.
Yeah.
Until later this month. So she'll
12
be
12 days, yeah.
She's currently in an 11th house perfection, but about to move into a Taurus perfection. So on the one hand, this doesn't really emphasize the signs where these eclipses are happening. Well, actually, no, I shouldn't say that. The lunar eclipse occurs in Taurus in early November.
Mm-hmm.
So that will be happening.
That is the perfected sign.
That will be happening in the perfected sign. I don't think it makes any close aspects to anything aside from like an opposition to her Mercury and sort of an out of sign conjunction to her, moon.
Conjunction to the moon opposition.
But we know that eventually those those Sun Moon conjunctions, oppositions will be occurring in Aries and Libra, which is also her 11th and 5th. I'm not sure how to make sense of that in context of like her role as vice president. I would say that these things are maybe more personal, perhaps.
I don't know.
The only kind of big trends that I can see coming up for her, like that has to do with her career and her public reputation, is of course Saturn, which is currently really close to a midheaven.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing. I mean, and also think about her Jupiter. That Jupiter of hers is about to get the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction next spring.
Oh yeah, so that's a major.
She's in the Taurus perfection year, and I think that's the big story, because the second Saturn return, like you said, she's about to turn 59. The second Saturn return is also a Jupiter return, unlike the first Saturn return at 29, which is Jupiter will be opposite the natal position. But the second Saturn return is also a Jupiter return. And yeah, I think this is really, sort of That's I think the time to really
What
look.
if Biden? I mean, what if Biden
Whoops.
has to sort of announce late in the game that he,
Yep,
you know,
that's what I think.
can't run, and then she has to kind of just step
Yep,
in, and there isn't enough time to have like
yep.
debates, and she just ends up kind of becoming the de facto candidate.
I said something to that effect long ago during a stream. That's my hypothesis of, I mean, I won't swear by it like the way I'm swearing by I think Trump will win, which I'm still swearing by, despite everything. But my hunch astrologically is that she just winds up getting sort of shoved in as the de facto candidate because something goes wrong with Joe.
Well, if that happens, then can we look at the date that Saturn actually hits her midheaven after stationing direct?
Sure. I was showing you that in
Yeah.
April is when the Jupiter Uranus conjunction happens very, very close to that natal Jupiter first.
That's
But
right.
I can go back after the direct station. When it comes to the
so it's like
if
right
the
in early
if,
December.
yeah, late December, when it's right on her midheaven.
And
The
literally
direct station's
this
in
is
early
like past
November.
all the deadlines. Like no one else will even be
I mean,
eligible to go to run.
and there's no debates, and there's no time to choose someone. No, I think that's exactly what I think will happen. And you can see down here, like I was saying, her progressed Pluto is just stationed retrograde. Her progressed Uranus will be stationing retrograde by the election. So I've kind of thought for a while now that something of that nature would happen, that she'll wind up being the candidate because something goes wrong with Joe. And I'm still saying, I think Trump wins, which just
So
seems crazier and crazier position to take. And I hope I look like a fool from a year, 13 months from now.
So age 59, 12 house perfection. It contains her Jupiter. Jupiter rules her midheaven.
Yep.
So Jupiter is kind of importing topics of reputation and career into sort of one of the overarching topics for that year. What I wonder what happened to her in a past 12th house year. So that would be
worth figuring out. Can I tell you something else about the 12th house perfection year though?
Sure.
There's something when I mean not the 12th house perfection year, about having Jupiter in the 12th house. People with Jupiter in the 12th house, they wind up having transiting Jupiter follow the perfected sign over the course of their lives. Like very often, whatever the perfected sign is, transiting Jupiter will be in that sign. Like, for instance, when she has her birthday coming up, she'll be going into a Taurus perfection year and Jupiter will be in Taurus. Last year, when she went into an Aries perfection year, Jupiter was in Aries. You catch my drift?
Right. So she would have been in her last 12th house perfection year basically from October 2011 through till October 2012. And in 2011, she had just become the California Attorney General. And
she became Attorney General in 2011. January of 2011.
So, but that was during a different perfection year though, when she was actually in the 12th house year. Most of it would have been in 2012. So what is going on? Yeah, this might take a little while. I'm looking
at the year 2000, which is also a 12th house perfection year.
2012.
Okay.
Because I would think it would be. Okay, I mean, something that did happen is she signed an accord with the Attorney General of Mexico to improve coordination of law enforcement resources targeting transnational gangs engaging in the sale and trafficking of human beings across the San Isidro border crossing. Um, I mean, I guess it's sort of I mean, I guess you could say that's just within the purview of obviously of her position, but I'd also say the topic is kind of 12th housey. But it might be something that is just sort of more personal. I'll need to do more research on her transits and stuff.
Yeah,
I've only ever looked at her ZR.
Yeah, Laura's just saying, I might be mistaken, but haven't most of the VPs that have taken over after presidential death been cardinal signs replacing fixed signs? I know that's too general, but, and then GF Martel already came up with one exception, but I can think of others. LBJ was a Virgo, JFK was a Gemini. Truman was a Taurus, and FDR was an Aquarius. Let's see, who else do we have? Let me go to my presidents. Right. Garfield was a Scorpio and he was replaced by a Libra. So that was a fix being replaced by a cardinal. Here, I'll share the screen so I'm looking here so everyone can see what I'm doing. Right, so there's Arthur's a Chester Arthur's a Libra, James Garfield is a Scorpio. Lincoln was an Aquarius, Johnson was a Capricorn. Okay, so that's another fix to cardinal. There are some of them like this. Fillmore was a Capricorn and he replaced Zachary Taylor, who was a Sagittarius. So no, that's mutable to cardinal. William Henry Harrison was an Aquarius and he was replaced by John Tyler, who was an Aries. Okay, so that's there are some examples. There are some fixed to cardinal examples, but it doesn't seem to be like a fixed rule by any stretch. And then the other one to go to is but that's an interesting observation insofar that it has been somewhat true. McKinley was an Aquarius and TR was a Scorpio, so that's another fix to fix. But there are a few of them who make that pattern, and that's an interesting sort of half accurate observation that I'm going to sort of store away and look at some more. So,
yeah, I've a long time ago I noticed that there seemed to be an interesting pattern amongst the Saturn placements of some of the modern presidents since Kennedy. Since Kennedy, every president has had Saturn close to 25 degrees of a cardinal sign or around 2 degrees of a fixed sign, except the presidents whose terms were interrupted.
Since Kennedy, who's had an interrupted term?
Well, Nixon.
Oh yes,
has Saturn.
Yes. Yeah. I've heard of that.
Saturn in late Taurus. And he had an interrupted term. Kennedy. No, actually, no. I believe no. So was it?
I can pull up their Saturns now.
Who took over at a weird time? Let me. All right. I always think I have something like solid, and then
okay.
I half remember it.
Yeah, I know that happened. That happened to me a couple of weeks ago, where I was like, I suddenly couldn't remember something that I had said years ago, and I had to sort of go through my thoughts. So let's see. Ronald Reagan
has Saturn in
Saturn
at
zero Taurus.
So he has Saturn in an early in a fixed sign.
Right. Nixon, it was Saturn at 27
end of Taurus.
End of Taurus. Gerald Ford, Saturn
in mid Gemini. So he doesn't fit the pattern, and he's one who took over in strange circumstances.
Yeah, he wasn't even elected.
Yeah.
George H.W. Bush is Saturn 25 Libra, as is Jimmy Carter, because they were born the same year. Oh no, Jimmy Carter is Saturn at 1 Scorpio.
Yeah, exactly. So so the pattern I've noticed is that the presidents since Kennedy have Saturn either late in the cardinal sign or really early in a fixed sign, and all of the others are like strange. aberrations.
Okay, so Biden, Saturn, and Gemini, just
So
like
he's another one
Ford.
that's just like
Right,
Ford.
right. Okay. And then the three black threes of 46, 23 Cancer, 26 Cancer, and 2 Leo. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah. Okay. I see what you're onto here. And then Obama is 25 Capricorn. Okay. Okay. Interesting. What can I
Jimmy.
say?
Oh, did you see Jimmy Carter already?
Yeah, yeah, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he was one Scorpio. Which is interesting because he ran against Reagan and their Saturns are opposite. That's something I haven't, you keep peeling the onion, you keep finding stuff. That's really, really interesting.
Um.
Let's see who else. Just going back here. Hoover,
Yeah.
Saturn at 10
Before
Aquarius.
Kennedy, it all breaks down.
Okay.
It doesn't.
But that's
Fall.
kind of consistent with things I've seen studying other planetary cycles. Is like a pattern will come in and it'll do a stretch of time and then it'll vanish. You know what I mean? Like it'll hold and then it'll vanish. It'll come in and it'll be there are some other things that last like long times, but there'll be interruptions in the middle. But that is really interesting. I think
But it also, if you look at Trump, you saw Trump. He was born with Saturn in the late cardinal, so he was sort of fit in that that pattern. So I'm a little concerned that Harris, with her late Saturn in Aquarius,
just doesn't fit the bill. Well, also
doesn't fit that pattern unless a new pattern establishes.
In Venus intervals, she's born in a really limp Venus interval for U.S. presidents. She's a white 2 interval.
Although one could also say there wouldn't. There's been no precedent, for the kind of president that she would be. Being
no, sure, yeah. No, I mean, Obama came into what was a weak interval, and he was obviously a very popular president. So that's an example of the cycle being sort of broken or changed at some point. So yeah, maybe she would,
but in an
break
appropriate
through.
way.
Yeah. No, I get
he
that.
was different.
Yeah. But look, I gave up being concerned a year ago. I chose my champion. Oh, thank
no.
I'm not
What
doing
is
this.
that?
I'm not doing this.
What the heck?
Do not
Do you have, like,
celebrate.
some,
Hey,
like-
listen.
Wait, does it do it for me? No. Do I?
No,
I don't get.
I get these
no.
thumbs up and these. Look, the
No.
day that Trump wins the election, I don't want to be congratulated by any of you. Okay, like let's just get that out of the way now. It's not, and by all means, deride me if he doesn't win. Put me in my place. But I don't want to be congratulated when the time comes.
Can I show you a little bit of Kamala Harris's Zodiac releasing?
Yes,
so you can
yes.
see the
This would be good.
overall shape of what it kind of looks like. So just go ahead and bring up Zodiac releasing from Spirit.
Okay. Shall I do that?
Yup.
Okay, just a moment. All right.
Ooh, sorry.
Just calm down there. We're trying to keep people entertained, Watson. You're yawning away.
Sorry.
That's all right. I
got up at like 5.
I know you're a dad. Dads don't get to sleep.
Oh wow! I mean, they slept pretty well. I just finally got a good night's sleep and woke up early. But now I've been up a while.
All right, so you can see her releasing that I'm doing here.
Yeah. So she has the lot of fortune in a mutable sign. I forget which one off the top of my head. Actually, it should be in her 7th house.
Sagittarius.
Yeah. So because she's born at a full moon. So, the theory goes, according to this technique, is that when the lot of spirit releases to the sign which is angular to her lot of fortune, that is, in a mutable sign, then we would say that the peak period of her reputation and of her activities, when she's at her most sort of impactful of the world around her in her own life, it would be the Pisces period, which you can see began December 25th, 2020, and lasts until October 23rd, 2032. So that you can see December 25th, 2020. This is just days after the Electoral College would have confirmed that Biden won the 2020 election, and she officially was elected VP. And so her vice presidential term, is taking place at the time when she's at the top. But it is interesting to consider that, this does go on for quite a bit longer. And so I wouldn't expect her to necessarily just completely disappear from the scene. And thus we might be able to tell that, she would continue to be important and relevant to the conversation. And if she were in a position, say, to take over for Biden, then it's conceivable to see that, that if she won 2 terms as a presidential candidate in her own right, that
would cover the period
that would cover the peak period. You can also see that even on level 2, that from November 10th, 2023 through till July 2nd, 2025, she will be in another peak period. So it's a peak within a peak. This is an even higher level that she reaches within this time frame. And this is so interesting because the time that I've been sort of zeroing in on for when Biden maybe decides that he doesn't want to continue with the general campaign would be December 2023. So we see there's something about basically next month, that starts this period of increasing activities. Now, it could just make sense that she's more in the public eye because she's, running as the VP candidate in the 2024 election. But what if it's more significant than that?
Yeah, no, I get you. I like I said, I'm quite on board for her being the candidate. In terms of, that's what I've suspected for some while, that Joe just won't make it one way or the other. Maybe he's just not strong enough. I'm not going to say that he dies, but maybe he's just not strong enough and he can't do it, or he has another fall and he's literally in hospital and traction or something like that. Whatever the case. Yeah. So why do you think December is when she would take over from him as the candidate? Why December?
Because well, very briefly, but if you want to bring up Biden's chart while I'm explaining this,
Sure.
and bring up his Zodiac releasing, then it'll become clearer. But basically, the most concise explanation I can give is that according to Joe Biden's Zodiac releasing, the current period he is in is a loosing of the bond, which was foreshadowed by the events of October 2015. And in October 2015, that was when Biden made the announcement that he was not going to run in the 2016 election. Though there were some reports that he had been pressured not to run in 2016 by Obama, actually, who basically said, you need to stay out of the way because Hillary has a stronger shot. But it was kind of unfortunate for Biden because at the same time, his adult son, Beau Biden, had just died of cancer and he was still grieving. And so he wasn't really in a good emotional or psychological place to undergo the trials of running a presidential campaign. And so that's the reason he gave in October of 2015. So if you go to October 2015, you can see that occurred under a Pisces level 2 period, which is the foreshadowing to the loosing of the bond that he had on April 19th. April 19th, 2023 was the very day that he announced his 2024 campaign. So if you go to October of 2015, you can see that happened within a Leo subperiod on level 3. So it basically, if prologue, if prelude leads to prologue,
then gotcha.
Then the Virgo Pisces loosing of the bond to Leo level 3 takes us to November 5th through December 22nd, 2023. I mean, if you wanted to get even more granular with that, you could take into account the L4 period and be able to project even that much further ahead, or more precisely the day Let me find out
When in
exactly what
October
day.
15th was it?
Yeah, it was so October 2015 Biden. So the idea is whatever you do during a foreshadowing period ends up sort of
Yeah.
coming full circle or becoming sort of magnified at the loosening of the bond.
All right. This is exciting. Yeah.
Yeah,
This is a really good news.
so he said this on October 21st, 2015.
Which is Taurus
So
level 4.
yeah, so
So if we transpose that, we
yeah.
get December 8th, 2023.
Yeah, December 8th to 9th. So
Yeah.
in theory, he would make a similar decision. He'd make a similar calculation, but of course, the scale and scope of this would be completely different because when he did this under the foreshadowing period, it was as a vice president. But under the
Right.
under the loosed version of this period, the loosening of the bond, this will be about doing the same thing, but as a sitting president, which is
Okay.
this would be fairly unprecedented. Well, no, it's not unprecedented. This would be very similar in some ways to Lyndon Johnson.
Yep. I will not seek, nor will I accept my party's nomination to serve another term as your president.
Right, Lyndon
March 31st,
Johnson.
1968.
Yeah, now I don't know if it shows up in the same way in his chart. It's not. It's just, but there is some precedent for a sitting U.S. president deciding not to run again, even though they technically could. So
Yeah. No, sure.
and Joe Biden could have decided to still run in the 2016 election, but he ultimately, decided not to, and so that's why this. I never realized that was like roundabout. I'm terrible at being concise, but basically, this upcoming time frame, early December, is similar to October 2015, which is when he made this decision not to run in 2016. And if we transpose that, then most logically it would be about him deciding not to run in a 2024. So, and it's in the right time frame too.
Yeah.
Because basically, the deadlines for be able to be on the ballot, like they were passing like right then.
Yeah.
It would basically be impossible for another person to replace him, and so that's what kind of leads me to think that Saturn station and third Saturn conjunction to Kamala Harris's midheaven will be about her having to solemnly, assume this great burden, of suddenly taking on, something that she maybe hadn't planned on having to do.
I'm with you on this. I think this is a pretty solid prediction. We'll find out on December 8th if it's
right. Yeah. We'll find out exactly how on target.
How on target it. Yeah, it'll either come down to the level 4 level of accuracy or the level 3 or the level 2.
Well, yeah, and it's tricky because some astrologers might disagree with me using this lot for Joe Biden, because if you look at Joe Biden's natal chart, you'll see that his lot of spirit is really close to the end of a sign. It's really close to the end of Gemini and potentially at the beginning of Cancer. His birth time has a reasonably good source, but it's still at the half-hour mark, so it's reasonably.
Yeah, I see that the spirit is at 29:45 of Gemini.
It's possible that he could have a lot of spirit in Cancer, and it's really frustrating because when you try to compare the two possibilities,
well,
there's a lot of overlap.
If we release from Cancer, what does it become then? Does it make sense with his life?
Well, in some ways it does, because I did a huge cross comparison of all his elections and everything in my paper that I released last election, but according to this, he would be in his peak period now until 2028. If he, since he has a lot of fortune in Taurus. So 2013 through 2028 would be his peak period, and that could conceivably make sense because that started before he became president. He was already vice president, which started in the Libra period. And if you look on the Libra period, you'll notice that the Capricorn sub period, November 3rd, 2008, is one day before he was elected vice president.
Right. But it's not angular.
No, it's not angular. Yeah, it's not angular, but it's an
And ditto
interesting.
like, you know,
Yeah,
in this one, when he was elected president, he's not in an angular.
right.
So I like, that's the thing, is the other one releasing from Gemini just seems to work more broadly speaking, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, it's tricky. There's a lot of overlap. It's in some ways it's too complicated to get into casually, but
Yeah, I mean,
uh
87 is a huge year. I know that's the year, like, he's running for president. He has a brain tumor, and
that's right.
he's caught, you know, some paper he wrote was plagiarized.
Right. Yeah,
So
no,
all that
it was
stuff
bad.
happens to him in 87. So I know, like, 87 is huge, but mind you, that would be a peak period, but not a very good one for him. What, you know? Uh,
Right.
um, but
If
yeah.
you Yeah, I mean the if you it there's another way you can look at that as well if you release from his lot of fortune.
Mhm.
Um if you look at his lot of fortune, then you can see that
Is
1987
yeah,
is same
losing
frame.
of the bond, and that's like almost I think he had his brain tumor like in September of 87. I have it in a file
It
somewhere.
was I think it was actually early 88 because
Oh, okay.
he said that
Let me see.
losing getting like having to drop out of the 88 race in 87 saved
Okay.
his life.
Yeah, yeah, here we are. You're right. September 17th, 87, admits to law school plagiarism. September 23rd, 87, withdraws presidential bid. February 12th, 88, first aneurysm surgery. May 4th, 88, second aneurysm surgery.
Right.
And
So
he had announced his candidacy June 9th, 87. So yeah.
one thing you definitely want to look at just for a second is check out the date September 23rd, 1987, the day he withdrew his presidential bid. I think you'll
Okay.
notice something kind of interesting on Biden's chart there.
Uh, give me the date again.
Oh, you had it in your file. It's the day
I
he
did.
withdrew. The day he withdrew the
Of
presidential bid, 87, September
80.
23rd, 1987.
Oh,
There you go.
okay. Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay, that day. Sorry.
You're fine.
Um, yeah, I know I've looked at this before.
Okay, look what's happening around his.
Oh,
There's
what?
a
Oh,
solar
oh,
eclipse
gee.
in Libra. What's that? Well, actually, no, it happened in late Virgo, but that's his 10th house.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
we know that like there's going to be a series of solar eclipses in Libra that eventually go into his 10th in Virgo, and I don't know when the first one is that happens in Virgo, but yeah, he doesn't tend to do terribly well when the eclipses start happening close to his degree
Gotcha.
of midheaven. This is also how I know that the birth time must be reasonably close, because you'll see Mars is so close to the degree of his midheaven on the day
Yeah,
that he
yeah.
had to withdraw because of the plagiarism accusations and everything. Um,
So according, like we saw the losing of the bond from Fortune in 87.
mhm.
But
Right.
now I'm looking at at now from Fortune.
Hmm.
And yeah, he's not going to have that next losing of the bond until
Yeah.
2031.
Now, here's something really interesting to consider about Joe Biden's fortune is, fortune's about events that happen to you outside of your control, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't choose to become vice president, did he? He was chosen to be vice president. So,
Sure.
we know from this technique that he should be on a peak period from fortune when releasing from a lot of fortune when he reaches the Leo period, because that is angular to his lot of fortune. So if you go on the Leo level 1 period, you'll see that he was picked by Obama in the early months of 2008, in the summer of 2008. And you'll see that he's on an angular period on level 1, an angular period on level 2, angular period on level 3. I forget the exact date that it happened. It was at a Mercury Venus conjunction on his midheaven,
Okay.
when he was asked that he wanted to be vice president. But I think it's really interesting because it shows that sometimes you see career events happen through the lot of fortune when the things that happen kind of outside of your control. So even though it was ostensibly a career event, I mean, this is a bit different than him deciding to run for Senate, say, when he was a young man. This is him
Sure. I
being.
mean, I'm mostly with you. I think that, I mean, the one thing is, it's not like he hadn't done anything, because he was running.
Yeah.
I remember the day he ended his run, January 3rd, 2008,
Mhm.
and it really was like, oh, I even have the day that Biden was introduced, August 23rd. Okay, there you are. That's the day he was introduced as the candidate. But going back here, like he had been. I mean, the reason he's chosen by Obama's going to choose someone who had been, running in the race. I mean, it's not a rule that he has to, but it kind of stands to reason.
Right.
I hear
Um,
you. I hear
but
you.
but
He
well,
was chosen.
but if you also think about it, I mean, you know the if you look at his lot of fortune releasing for the time frame in which he was running his doomed 2008 primary campaign, that all happened during the Caden period.
Yeah, right,
You
right.
know, he
And then
decided to
it
run
only
off.
start right. Like if he
It
had
all
stuck
went
it through, maybe
downhill.
he would
You
have
know,
won. Yeah, yeah.
and
And
he ended up
hard to
withdrawing at the end of the Caden period.
right. And the level 4, because I guess this holds, is this loosing of the bond in Aquarius, which would hold for the rest of that level 4.
Right.
So it's all fixed. Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so I mean, so there are alternate ways of using the lot sometimes, but you have to sometimes you have to really ask yourself what's happening, because the decision to run is different from whether people will vote for you, and the decision to run is even different from uh being asked to just run. Um, and so I think we can see that really clearly on
Mhm.
Joe Biden's Zodiac releasing, because we can also see when releasing from Spirit, the other thing that kind of clinched it for me that he had Spirit and Gemini is the fact that the time that he decided to run in the 2008 election back in like February of 2007 correlates exactly with the time that he it's the same sequence that occurs on a larger level when he decides to run for the 2020 election, and then that itself ends up being repeated at the nomination when he gets nominated, and then that ends up repeating at inauguration day.
Okay,
So
so wait,
yeah,
explain
okay,
this.
so
Yeah,
all
yeah.
right, so
Let's see these rather than just
okay,
raffle them off.
yeah.
So he announces his candidacy in February of 2007. You said.
Yeah, I can get you the exact date, 2007 run announcement. So you can see that he January 31st, 2007.
Okay.
So you can see he's under
He's
um
Virgo, Gemini, Aries.
Virgo, Gemini, Aries.
Okay.
And then uh if we go to Virgo, Gemini, Aries, so
Virgo,
Virgo level 1,
Gemini,
Gemini,
Aries.
then
Yeah.
we get to this time frame in early 2019, which is when he announced for his 2020 run.
When in 2019 did he announce his what?
Joe Biden 2019 run announcement. It was actually on April 25th, 2019
Oh,
so
no.
just
Just
prior
shy.
to
Just shy. Yeah, I don't, okay. I'm
and
all right.
then when you go to the date of the DNC in 2020,
Okay. Which was sort of probably around here. Is this right? Am I doing it right?
one sec.
It's usually August, towards the end of the month.
21st, 2020. What did I see there before? Was that something else I had seen before on a different lot or something? Oh no. Well, I don't remember. Maybe this was on Fortune, something I saw. But if you go to 2020, if you go to January 20th, 2021, you'll see he ends up back in a Gemini period, and so
Virgo,
we sort of
Virgo, Cancer, Gemini,
Virgo.
Sagittarius.
Yeah. Well, Cancer contains this Jupiter. I wrote all this out on the
Okay.
essay I wrote from 2020. Maybe I'm mixing up some of my details there on.
Yeah, no, I know
unit
something.
things.
I've found myself that I don't retain my old work as well as I would have thought. I've found that a few times.
But the but the still, I think it's noteworthy that he announced at a just after a signature that ended up repeating at the same time that he ran for that he ended up running in 2020, because it's frustrating that it's a little tiny bit off. It's like one day after he was in the previous sign that
Yeah.
he announced his run in 2007, but it's it's wild that it's that close at all. But at the same time, you have to remember that spirit is about like motivations and choices, and the time that a headline hits the newspaper stands, that's not always going to be coincident with when the candidate themselves is like actually decided to fire off the to pull the trigger, on what they want to do. So
Indeed.
that's a little, that's some of my thinking on Joe Biden's ZR.
Well, well done. Well done. I think, I think certainly that the argument for December being when he sort of steps down, that'll be really curious to watch. And obviously, it's not like, we have to wait 13 months for the election, but only 2 months to see if you're right with that.
Right.
So nice to have some movement on that.
Right. Yeah. I if I'd known I was going to talk about it, I would have prepared it.
I came up against the same thing. I had Sam on my solo stream a few times, and I was taking him through like that material I had on the Venus synodic cycle and the history of race relations. And this was stuff that I read books, I took all these notes, but when I was just showing him the slides, I was like, oh, I suddenly was drawing blanks on names that I know well and details that I should have had at my fingertips. And it's just like, yeah, you really got to keep it refreshed. Otherwise it slips through and you got to do all the work again. Or at least you got to revise your work again and review it. All right. Well, how you doing? Are you strong?
Yeah, pretty much.
I was going to say today, not too long from now, I think about an hour from now or so. I have to look up the exact time, but Chris is going to be live streaming this video of the UAC conference, the very first UAC conference in 1986. It has been on YouTube for a few days now, but he's going to be live streaming it in an effort. We want to try and identify all the different people that we see in the video. Some of them are just sort of, astrologers of 30 something years ago, 37 years ago. And, their names aren't necessarily, or their faces aren't familiar to us. So yeah, people who might want to check that out. Well, it's worth watching the video on YouTube in its own right, but for this live stream Chris is doing, that's on the docket later today. So go to the Astrology Podcast website and tune in.
You're gonna be there, right?
I'm gonna be there. Yeah.
I will try to make some of it.
Okay.
But I don't know how much I'll be able to do. But yeah, that's probably gonna be a blast from the past. Well, I was even born.
Yeah, right. I mean, I was literally just graduating high school. I did watch some of the video. I watched like the first half hour or so already. And yeah, I saw Jeff Jower, the late great Jeff Jower. So there were some familiar faces. A much younger Rob Hand is visible, and younger Michael Luton. But yeah, there's a lot of people, some of whose names are very familiar to me, but I don't know them as people. So it's worth checking out.
I think they're people, Nick.
Really? What did I say that was ridiculous?
No, I was just. It was
astrologers are people. Astrologers are people.
Yeah,
it's
Jeff
quite the
Jower, he's passed away, I'm afraid.
yeah.
But I was always I always thought it was Jeff Jaw. I never heard anyone say it out loud.
Oh,
But
I
that's happened to
yeah.
me quite a
Well,
bit in astrology.
Jeff and Rick Levine were my first employers in astrology. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
For a few years, I bought their like year ahead sort of forecasts and books I mean that was like back in like 2005, 2006, 2004 even, I think. And so yeah, I remember those names, and I was always kind of tickled by the fact that Jeff Jawer or
Jower.
Jeff
Yeah,
Jower,
yeah, he pronounced it
he went
Jower.
he went to UMass Amherst, which I thought was kind of funny at the time because I was living in Massachusetts, but then I ended up going to UMass Amherst. And then like I discovered like Bruce Schofield was a professor at UMass Amherst. And I actually like met up. I'm like, this is a strange
Yeah,
place,
yeah.
like where like a few kind of big astrologers have gone through. Like it's not known for being it's just basically the flagship public university in Massachusetts.
Yeah. I
But yeah, some
yeah,
big
it's even
people went through
stranger
there.
that my worlds colliding. One of my favorite bands back in the early 90s was a band called Dinosaur Jr., who are from Amherst, Massachusetts. And Bruce Schofield lives across the street from Jay Mascis, the leader of Dinosaur Jr., and has actually played bass, just
Oh
in
my
not
god.
not not like as a member of Dinosaur Jr., but as like played bass in Dinosaur Jr., like with the guys in Dinosaur Jr., which is like boom, blow
But
my mind.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. The best you could get to jam with Hendrix in the early 90s would be with someone like him. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Bruce
It
is
was really funny. I set up a meeting with Bruce, and we like met up in like a classroom in his department, and we sort of got into talking about astrology. And he was like so paranoid. He was like sort of looking around, making sure like no one could get
yeah, it's
like
his
someone
job on the line.
someone like poke the head in, and like we actually moved our location like 3 times while we were meeting because he was afraid like someone was like listening in on our conversation about Venus, because I asked him about his work on Venus, and I thought the like Mesoamerican
Mhm.
stuff he'd done with Venus was so fascinating. And we never got to meet up again because he I wasn't taking any classes where I would have had him as a professor or anything.
Okay.
And he was also concerned that it would sort of seem improper or something if I like, I don't know, went over to his house or something.
Yeah, you're not having sex with the guy, man. You're asking him about astrology.
I know, but he seemed very
Okay, yeah.
sensitive to
Yeah,
appearances.
chances are it's like, probably with good reason, probably because he understood his
Well, he's
his
a
his
professor,
situation.
and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
Um,
I mean, I would have been happy to, though. I would have been happy to discuss astrology, and how what a crazy coincidence, it is to sort of have to
yeah.
actually been going as a student to the to,
Well, I hesitate to mention this because now people are going to want me to produce it. But in June of 1999 at Hunter College in New York, there was an NCGR conference, and it was the first conference I ever spoke at, actually. June 6, 1999. And I spoke on Venus. And I tell you now, I knew nothing about Venus in June of 99. I mean, compared to now, like this is pre-synodic cycle Venus, Nick, but Bruce spoke at the conference, and I was trying to make a little documentary at the time. This is before YouTube existed, so I don't know what I was going to do with it. But I had two friends come down from Montreal, a camera and a sound person, and I interviewed a few astrologers on video. And somewhere in someone's closet, there's these videotapes of a 30-year-old me interviewing and also much younger Bruce Schofield. Yeah, it'd be fun to dig that up. I'll try to do that at some point and put it
Mary
online.
Hodge says, UMass, the Minutemen. I was there between 1996 and 1998. I lived in Butterfield. I know exactly where that is. I lived in Orchard Hill. A girl I was dating lived in Butterfield, so I went over there a bit. She said she was studying classics, Greek, and Latin literature. They have a wonderful classics department too. They do. I was briefly a classics major, but I couldn't handle the pressure of learning Greek and Latin, and I thought I wouldn't be good at anything else except music, so I did that, the sensible decision. And so yeah, but UMass is a great school, bit expensive, but great school.
Well, it's I mean, all your schools are expensive in the States, dude.
Yeah, no,
Otherwise, how are you going to get people to join the military if you don't make your schools expensive? I mean, come on, get it together.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it makes me sad and angry.
I know. Sorry, I don't. Again, I'm being glib and
Oh no. Yeah, no, it's yeah.
all the Americans I know and the many more that I don't know who are their lives are going to pot because they can't pay their student debts, and here I am cracking jokes. But anyway.
Oh no, it's okay. Yeah, it is what it is. But what else was I gonna say? I did almost go to King's College, Cambridge.
Oh dear.
Oh dear. I almost went to King's College, Cambridge, except not really. Like basically, I was about 16 or so. My dad was like, well, you should probably go to Cambridge or Oxford, like a real college. And I was like, all right. So he's like, well, we can get you in there if you like audition for the King's College, Cambridge, like choir, like this like elite, like boys choir. And like my sight reading was like, okay, I did not prepare nearly enough for this audition. And just right off the bat, like they played a note and said like sing a -6 about this, I mean, stuff I could probably do now, but I might even still need a second now. Like, wait a sec. Like, I got it. But at 16, I just didn't have that kind of immediate ability to do intervals, and they gave me quite a difficult piece of sight read, and it was such a total mess. And of course, I didn't even understand anything about what I was doing. So like, they asked me, what do you want to read? I'm like, read? What do I want to read? Because I'm like too American by this point.
That they mean your major.
Yeah. I'm like,
what they mean.
Yeah, I know. They're like, what do you want to read? I'm like,
I was at Cambridge reading law.
And they're like, no. I'm like, no, you ninny. Like, what do you want to read?
Fool.
Do you want to read geography? I'm like, geography? I'm like, I might like to read film. They're like, you can't study film at Cambridge. Yeah, so I just completely misunderstood the assignment for that. So yeah, I left with my tail between my legs.
Well, we wouldn't have you in our world if that had happened. You'd be
right.
You'd be off riding around in limousines asking people if they have any Grey Poupon. That's what you'd be doing.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay with not having gone to Cambridge. That's fine with me. It's funny that because I did I ended up getting a lot out of college, but not necessarily in my classes, I'm afraid.
I know
because at the same time that I was doing my classes, I was like studying astrology nonstop, and I was blogging about astrology. We worked together on the celebrity astrology blog back in 2008 with Chris. And then we worked on the political astrology blog. And so like that was kind of like my world for a while. And then on top of that, I was also like doing all of these like extracurricular like musical stuff. I was like doing all these arrangements for my a cappella group. I was doing like sort of scores for like student films. And, I felt like that was kind of where my education was really happening, and school was sort of a second thought. But
in the white
case,
with black curtains at the station.
Yeah. So anyway,
speaking of
this is all giant tangent.
Speaking of non sequiturs and of you singing White Room, have you seen the AI art of David Hasselhoff breaking the Berlin Wall? Have you seen that?
No.
Oh my God.
No, I haven't.
everyone go out and look like
That's really funny
after the
though.
live stream. Yeah,
He
someone made there's a whole straight. I mean, it goes on like all these images of like David Hasselhoff breaking down the Berlin Wall, or like farting and breaking the Berlin Wall.
It's
And
not
it's just like
surprising to me though. He was really popular in Germany for
he
some
sang
reason.
on the wall. I mean, I remember what had happened. What happened was he sang a
Oh,
song there, so it was part of the celebration because he
oh, I
was
had no
huge in
idea.
Germany. He was huge in Germany. He was like a major pop star, and so when the wall came down, they had him like sing there as
Huh.
part of the celebration. So it's not like, but then that turns into like, oh, David was a popular, pop star who sang a song as they were breaking down the Berlin Wall. It turns into like him as like the guy who's literally busting the wall with
Busting the
his
wall.
own ass and arms, like it's just, but it's really funny. It's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
for people who
Wow,
don't
this
understand.
has gone off the rails.
Yeah, I have to take us back. March 17th, 2009. I go to Hammersmith Odeon,
No, no.
Hammerstein Ballroom.
You've already
Hammerstein
told the
Ball.
story. You've already told
Okay,
the story in a
okay,
different. Yeah,
all right, all right.
that's
Well,
okay.
some people don't know. Okay. Well, I need to get ready. I need to eat and stuff before
Yeah,
Chris's thing, which is in about an hour, I think, if I understand my time right, an hour or two. I have to double check the exact
yeah.
time.
No, it's yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm. I think I'm ready to go.
Sufficiently. Okay.
I think I'm ready to go. But
Yeah, you've had a rough week.
but it's yeah. Next time, I guess I'll try to do some prep on some of these things that I sometimes reference because I don't want to misspeak.
No, you
on
did
things.
beautifully. I was maybe scrutinizing you a bit,
Oh no! Well,
just
no.
to get it, but
You
only
should
to
be
get a
able.
sense. Yeah, just to get a sense
Yeah.
of what you were putting forward.
Oh yeah.
But,
No, as you
but
should.
believe me, I know what it's like. You really got to do constant review in order to keep all the material fresh in your head. That's something that I've been contending with a lot lately as well. Barbara A is saying, I wonder if you could look at the transit in the state of Israel, May 14th, Tel Aviv, 1948. I do have that chart. It's a red 3. I mean, that was the thing about 1948. I'll just put it up quickly before we go. It's the chart that's often proposed as it is the foundation chart of Israel as a state. Let's go to the 1940s. There we are. Right. Oh, look at that ascendant for Israel. let me put up the angles and.
Oh my gosh. Like literally.
Oh, and look at that sun and oh, look, they were founded about 3 days after a solar eclipse. And
Oh no.
I know this Venus is about to station retrograde. This is a red 3 interval.
Oh, so they'll be having their Uranus return in Gemini as well.
Yep.
Ah. As if it wasn't chaotic enough. All right.
And you know what's funny? This Venus it's 19 days before the retrograde station, and 19 years after 1948 is 1967, the 6 Days War.
No way.
Yeah. Which did happen not too long before the red 5 Venus retrograde in Leo, which of course goes over all this stuff.
Right.
Okay. Well, anyway, that's interesting. That Libra rising, the fact that like the Jupiter Uranus is going to be on the sun next spring.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's weird.
And they have a Jupiter at Uranus opposition, so you just know that conjunction is going to be.
Yeah,
something.
it's gonna be
That's
much
be a thing.
more.
Yeah.
Now, Jupiter Uranus, that combination that makes me think of like miraculous breakthroughs and the idea of I mean, if Uranus is like breakdowns and breakthroughs, then Jupiter is like the sort of positive version of that, or like the ability of technology to kind of expand new horizons or new areas of awareness or that kind of thing.
Hamas literally had people invading with hang gliders, motorized hang gliders yesterday. So there's already some really curious. Did you see that?
No.
Some of the invaders were flying in on these hang gliders. So that's a bit. It reminds me, like in the French Revolutionary War, they did use a hot air balloon for reconnaissance. The first time that they used flight for military purposes. It kind of reminds me of that. What I would say when I think of Jupiter Uranus. Remember, this is Israel. Like, I know you have like Jews and Muslims, but within those two factions, there's a lot of groups within them, and some of them are more extreme and some of them are more sort of moderate. And I just think of like Jupiter Uranus being the more extreme on for the factions on either side, you know.
So Jupiter will be blessing radicals.
Yeah, it's just, you know, radicals will be sort of empowered, and you know, I could see, yeah, and I can see that easily applying to both sides of this conflict, you know.
Right. Although this is Israel, so I would think then that Jupiter Uranus would be sort of empowering the extremist elements of Israel, the extremists.
Yeah, mind you, I mean, you know, can you cast a chart for Palestine, for the Palestinian people? No, you can't. But you know, they're walking the earth, so I don't know. You know, if that's the limitation of a nation state chart is not everyone has a nation state, and yet they still exist as human beings. And
well, right,
how do you track them?
Well, and I suppose the chart of Israel is also going to contain the broader context surrounding it as well. So maybe that's like.
Yeah.
In
other words, in other words, I think, you know, the Palestinian people, you know, their plight is also found, you know, to some degree in the state chart of Israel, because even if they're not citizens, like, you know, they live in that geographical area, you know, regardless of whether you're considered a citizen or not. If you're a human being occupying that space, then that chart, you know, applies to circumstances around you. And these aren't political arguments. These are astrological arguments.
Right. Well, so I still think the seventh house would be Aries. So that would be ruled by Mars, and Mars is in Leo, contrary to sect, squaring the sun, like pretty closely. Co-present with Saturn and Pluto.
Yeah.
Like this is a really, it sort of describes, I guess, the opposition, you know, to the state of Israel being pretty fierce.
Yeah, which it always has.
Always has been.
Always has. So yeah. It speaks to what I was describing at the start of this conversation, the fact that, you know, it just seems to always be cranked up to 11. That just, it always seems to be in turmoil.
Right.
And therefore I find it harder to track. All right. Okay, without further ado, I know we're leaving people on an interesting side note, but hey, you know, hopefully the world will still be here next Sunday and we can talk about it some more.
End with an optimistic tone. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. All right. See you guys.
All right. Thank you, Pat. Oh, Patrick, who are you?
I'm Patrick Watson. I'm an astrologer. You can see my work and services at patrickwatsonAstrology.com. And you can find me on most social media sites at P. Watson Astro.
All right. And I'm Nick Dagan Best. You can find me at nickdaganbestastrologer.com for all astrology services, and check out my YouTube and TikTok and all that stuff for the videos. And yeah, I'll be here on my solo live stream tomorrow. So come join me tomorrow. And Patrick, you'll be back with me next week, unless you get some other sort of horrible bug.
I should be all right.
All right, let's hope so. Okay. Well, I wish you good health and a good week. And thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Bye.